Almost everything changes after having kids. Your schedule, your body, your outlook on life, your perception of your self-identity, your interests, pretty much everything. And when speaking to new moms, I've found that all those huge changes have a huge impact on their sexuality and their intimate relationship with their partner. I mean, let me just say those examples again. Schedule, body, outlook, identity, they're all so connected to our intimacy journey. Today we have the honor to have Yonina Rubinstein. Yonina is a dear friend who we pretty much grew up together since high school. We were next door neighbors for a few years, and I've always admired Yonina and her wisdom, her inner truth, and her deep drive to have meaningful impact in this world. Yonina Rubinstein has her B.ed as a certified sexuality educator, coach, and group facilitator. She's the author of the internationally acclaimed book, Sexuality After Childbirth, and When Kids Don't Speak, and runs the highly popular course, Growing Together, Raising Sexually Healthy Children. Founder of the Facebook community, Jewish Parents Raising Sexually Healthy Kids and Teens, with her unique approach, blending professional knowledge, a holistic outlook, and practical skills, she is redefining sexuality education in the Jewish world. I would like to give a warning that this episode is for adults, so you might want to put on some earbuds or listen when you are alone and without kids walking around. This episode is for you, mama, to really talk about our sexuality and intimacy after having kids and really be able to leave this episode with very practical and inspirational wisdom for you to be able to come to a place of healing and feeling really good about where you are and yourself and where you're going in this journey of our intimate relationship with ourselves and with our partners. So enjoy the episode, and here we go. Hey, and welcome to the New Mama Marriage Bliss Show. I want to help you get out of the overwhelm and distance and guide you to reconnect to yourself and to your husband. You know you want things to be different, but you're probably not sure how to make it happen. Well, mama, you're in the right place. Here we will dive into all the things you need to start loving your life and relationship and start living like soulmates and not roommates anymore. We will dive into motherhood, marriage, communication, holistic inspiration, and practical hacks and tips. Mama, I believe that transformation and deep connection await you. Hi, I'm Aliza Saeed, proud mama and grateful wife, and the Mama Marriage Coach. You too can turn your mess into magic. Come on, mama, and let's do it together. Hi, Yonina. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yonina is a dear friend. In addition to everything else that I said in the intro, or will say in the intro, Yonina is such a dear friend, and I'm so excited that we're able to do this together. So before we start, why don't you just tell us about yourself and what you do and how you started doing what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, this is really a great excuse for us to get together and to get to talk. So that's always good when there's an extra bonus to a podcast recording. So my name is Yonina Rubinstein. I live in Israel, and I am a mother of 3 beautiful children. I've been married for almost 12 years, and I am a sexuality educator, which means that I get to go talk to a lot of different people about the most interesting and juicy topics that we all want to talk about, but don't really have anywhere to do it. I started off working with women in my community after I got married. And I realized that there was a real lack of education and just information in terms of really basic things that couples and women needed to know about, like birth control, or just relationship dynamics and how they relate to sexuality, how sexuality actually works in a couple's relationship, and also after people have kids, different changes that happen and how to grow through them. And then I started working also in high schools with girls all over the country in Israel. And I kind of combined the things that I love. So I get to work with teens in schools and in different frameworks, and also with parents. I teach parents how to raise sexually healthy children. And of course, with women and mothers who are learning how to reconnect to their sexuality, or how to peel off layers of, things that are blocking them from being able to enjoy their sexuality and their relationship.
That's amazing. And I actually remember when it was a dream of yours to be able to do it. And it's unbelievable seeing your dream become reality. Yeah. So it's really, really great. So why don't we talk really about sexuality and intimacy after having kids? Because lots of things change. Maybe even if you want to talk about what the difference is between sexuality and intimacy, if you think there is. But what changes after we have kids? And I'm sure that we all feel it, but we got to normalize it a little bit by talking about it. So
yes. So first of all, I want to say to everyone who's listening that if you feel a little bit uncomfortable hearing us talk about sexuality, or saying words like sex or other words that we might say, like, I don't know, orgasm or pleasure. So two things. One is that's totally normal. Most of us grew up in a very puritanical culture, in a very shameful culture around sex, around our bodies, around being able to talk about pleasure. And then we use words like intimacy or other words to kind of cover up and hint at what we're talking about without actually saying it. So first of all, it's normal and it's okay. And take a deep breath. And if you really feel uncomfortable and you're just bringing up a lot of either physically, you feel like your body's really tense, or you're getting hot, or, your breathing is really shallow, you might want to skip this episode, or you might want to check in and watch it, listen to it in like small bits, like just 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And to take care of yourself, because it's a really, really important topic. And I think it's so important to learn it. And if you are feeling these kind of things, it's like your compass. I say it's like a treasure map where we say like X marks the spot where you feel an X, right? Where you feel something that's blocking you or stopping you. That's where you're like, okay, that's a spot to dig a little deeper. What's going on there? But to do it in a way that takes care of yourself. Like, don't push yourself to listen to it because you have to, because like, oh my gosh, I can't miss an episode of Elisa's podcast. It's so amazing. But then you end up getting really stressed and snap at your kids in the afternoon because you really put yourself too hard. So those are the two things. One is that it's normal.
Thank you for that disclaimer. That was great.
Yeah. And so, yeah, a lot of times we call sexuality intimacy because we're uncomfortable or because we think they're the same thing. But I want to say that sexuality isn't just about sex. So sexuality, we tend to think of it really as like, okay, anything that has to do with sexual touch, but it has to do with so much more. Our sexuality it's an innate part of being human, which is with us from the time we're born, from the time we're conceived, actually, until we die. And it has to do with being in a body and how we relate to our body and what it feels like for us to be in our body. So that can be body image. It can be gender. It can be how we experience touch, pleasure. It has to do with, getting a period and birth control and a reproductive system. And so much falls under that heading of sexuality. And intimacy is one of those things. And I like to divide intimacy into emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, and sexual intimacy. And that's a really important part, especially after people have babies and kids, because when things are working, right? So when we have our routines, we know what works us, we know what feels good. And then when there's some sort of change or challenge, it's really helpful to look at our relationship through that lens of emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, and sexual intimacy. So after having a baby, for example, everything can change. And it's important to know that it's different from, for each couple. If there's a couple who didn't have a great sexual life before having a baby, they might not notice anything different after having a baby. And different people are going to deal with different things. But when we think about how we can work, actually, this is getting into the practical part. So maybe we'll save it for the end. So I'll plant the seed here that there are different things. There's emotional, physical, and sexual intimacy. And we're going to talk about how we can use that information to help ourselves when we face challenges.
Awesome. So I like that because usually we just divide intimacy into emotional and physical, and like the sexual is part of the physical, but I like that you divide it into three, that there's physical intimacy that's not sexual intimacy. And I think that could just in and of itself be a big change, a big mind change for a lot of people. So that's great. So now as I'm asking you about these different challenges, I'm like dividing it in my head about like, okay, where does this go? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, some of the changes that could happen afterwards. You choose whichever one you want to discuss more and give us practical tips about how to deal with it. So I know that I think I was actually not long ago, I was reading some kind of research that the two most debated and hot topics with couples is finances and sex.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So
I think they're also cited as the two most common factors in divorce.
Yeah.
Maybe also there.
Right. Yeah. Also. So I think it definitely brings up also, of course, sex is something that's like on the surface, but really underneath, there's so much more happening there. Right. So it's not just that. Obviously, it's like a window to so much more. But once we have a baby, then all of these things can change. So there might be pain that we didn't feel before, maybe physical pain or some kind of like trepidation to even go there. Maybe your husband was with you during childbirth and you're afraid about how he sees you now. Maybe you're exhausted and you feel like you don't even have time to take a shower, let alone be intimate. Body image is a big one. Look, this is coming from a mama that's postpartum right now, like I'm living this right now. So body image is definitely a big one that I hear. Lack of desire from either side, right? How do we deal with when one side doesn't want it? Maybe we both don't even feel a need for it. Then what do we do with that? And also, how do you deal now with another being that's dictating my schedule? Like, okay, maybe we feel like it's a really great time right now, but right as we start, connecting a little bit, then somebody wakes up. Or, like, how do you deal with all these new changes after having a child with this whole realm of intimacy? Well, I just threw out so much at you. So I'll guide you little, talk about whatever you want. And
I want to start off by saying that there are we can divide the changes in a lot of different ways, and they're always going to be interconnected. But right, even while you were speaking, there are things which are purely physical. So for example, someone can experience pain during penetration because there is a lack of lubrication while breastfeeding. And that's purely physical. And if we buy some extra lube or use almond oil, then that solves the issue. What would exacerbate the issue is a lack of knowledge, right? So you think, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. Like the baby broke my body. Like this isn't what's happening. Or we sometimes tend to give emotional meaning to things which really don't have emotional meaning behind them. So for example, a woman once who told me that she felt like because her body isn't lubricating the way it used to, it means she's not as attracted to her husband, or that subconsciously her body is trying to tell her that she's not attracted to him. Or she went off onto all different tangents. Sometimes it really is just physical. Sometimes you really are just tired and you love your husband and you're attracted and you wish you could have sex with him right now, but you really are exhausted because you haven't been sleeping for 3 weeks and you just need to sleep. So it's important to know that a lot of these things are physical, and then the solution we would suggest is going to be on that physical level, right? It could be, you know what, get a babysitter to watch the baby so you can sleep, or use lube, right? Or whatever the specific physical thing is. A lot of times the changes have to do with our relationship dynamic. So it's not just that there's a physical thing going on, but it also has to do with the relationship dynamic of who's doing more right now, right? A lot of times women feel resentful towards their partners that they're not helping as much as they should, or that they get to sleep. And it's not just that you're tired, it's that you're also resenting your husband because he has no reason to be tired right now because he got to sleep the whole night, or he gets to go out to work and have adult interactions and you don't. There's also an element of our self-identity shifting. right? So, okay, if I used to be a really sexy woman and I could connect with my husband on a, like a woman and a man on a feminine level, all of a sudden, if I just feel like a milk bar, or I'm just in my pajamas and schlumpy all day, or I don't have any adult interaction, and I can feel like I'm losing that part of myself.
Also, I remember talking to you once. I remember we were at the playground, and I remember talking about this contradiction that we have inside of us also. That on the one hand, I want to be this attractive woman for my husband, but on the other hand, I see myself as a mother. So even if I want to be that, it's hard for me to be able to be both of those together. It seems contradictory in my mind.
And it can also work the opposite. It can also be, I've heard from men sometimes who are like, well, this is my child's mother. I can't have sex with her. That's inappropriate. Like, and Freud calls this the Madonna whore complex. Freud actually talks about this, and it shows up a lot in different ways, how there are, in our mind, there's a split between the sexual and the acceptable, between being able to really let loose and enjoy the erotic, and between being a pure or motherly, loving and giving figure. So it can happen in the way we view ourselves, and also in the way our partner views us. And also sometimes in the way we view our partner, right? Some women think it's really like a huge turn on when they see their husband playing with their kids or taking care of them. And some women are like, okay, that's the father in our family. I love him. He's amazing. I don't want to have sex with him. That's, I don't know, that just doesn't feel right to me. So that's a real thing. And I want to say, like, all these examples that we're giving might feel like, what does this have to do with sex? Like, okay, those are emotional hangups. Those are things like that. But we bring all of ourselves into the bedroom. Healthy sexuality is a place, or is an experience that is connected to who we are in all facets of our life. So there is a certain separateness of it, but we have to be able to show up in our full self. Our relationship affects the way we are with each other sexually. So when we spoke about the different kinds of intimacy, this is where emotional intimacy is so important. A lot of times after we have a baby, a couple's main priority and energy is focused on their baby or on their children, right? If there's more than one, then even more so. We're spending all this time focused on our kids and taking care of our kids. And we don't have time to connect with each other anymore and remember why we like each other and why we got married in the first place. And then I'll say to, someone who comes to work with me about the sex life or things that are going on, I'll say, well, when was the last time you guys had a conversation that wasn't about the kids? Or like, what's your relationship like in general? She's like, well, we go to work, we usually bicker because I feel like I'm doing so much more of the housework and carrying the mental load, and he gets to go out with his friends. I'm like, okay, well, why would you want to have sex with that person? Right? If you don't feel like, and if your relationship in general isn't feeling nourishing, isn't feeling like a place that you want to be and that you like this person that you're in the relationship with, and sex is just another chore that you need to check off on the list of things a husband and wife should be doing, that's not really something that you want to be doing. And that makes sense. It doesn't mean that there's a problem with your sex life. It means that you're healthy and you're attuned to what feels good to you, right? Sometimes people say, I'm suffering from low desire. And when I hear the whole story, I'm like, no, you're not suffering from low desire. You just have a very healthy intuition, right? Like, if you are having fun and enjoying your relationship, that would probably lead to you having more desire. So that's one, is the emotional intimacy.
I love that. I think that maybe in my head is the difference between sexuality and intimacy, because to me, sexuality is purely physical. And then when we talk about intimacy, there's these other realms of the emotion and the physical and it's all of that together. So for me, most of us, we don't desire sex with our husband. We desire true intimacy. And I don't know, tell me if this is accurate, but I think,
I think they're interconnected.
Right, exactly. And that's what we're seeking, not just the purely physical. The physical.
Right. So a lot of times it goes back to the split of, okay, there's the sexual things. And if I feel desire to do this physical thing, then I have desire. And it kind of gets disconnected from the other parts of our life. And so when we're going through a huge shift, like having a new child or becoming parents, or just different stages that we go through in life, our sexuality is naturally going to grow and change and shift with that, because it changes with us as a person, who we are as a person, the different stages we go through in life. And intimacy is really important for having a strong sexual connection and relationships. Studies show, John Gottman did a lot of studies on this, that the two main predictors for sustaining a strong and healthy sex life are, one, of a strong friendship, and two, prioritizing sex. Now, a strong friendship is everything we were just talking about now, is having that emotional connection and remembering why you guys like each other in the first place. Prioritizing sex doesn't necessarily mean having sex a lot, right? Because that's something that people get confused with. They're like, okay, wait a minute. That means I have to have, no, it doesn't mean you have to have a lot of sex, but you have to understand that it's how important it is to each of the partners and how you can meet those needs. It could be just having a conversation and saying, listen, we just had a baby. Let's put sex on the back burner for the next 3 months, and we'll check in again then and see how we're feeling about it. Right?
And what if my partner says, absolutely not? I don't think I can do that.
So that's where the strong friendship comes in, and the ability to communicate and the ability to find ways to meet each other's needs. And this is where the physical intimacy part comes in. Okay. Something that we see happens in couples in long-term relationships, regardless of kids or not, is that there is a steady decline in we call it neutral touch, in neutral touch throughout the relationship. So neutral touch are things like when you're sitting next to each other on the couch and watching a TV, watching a movie, sitting close enough to each other that your bodies touch. It means when you're going to throw in a load of laundry and you pass your partner, sitting somewhere, you pat their shoulder. There's all those things that aren't necessarily sexual, but they are touch, right? It's giving a hug when they come home at the end of the day. It's holding hands when we go on a walk. It's even maybe cuddling in bed before we go to sleep without there being any sexual expectations.
Kind of like the same kind of touch you would do with one of your children, maybe. Like,
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's just connective, and it's a really, really strong connective force. We know that touch is such an important element in health, and physical and emotional health. And couples tend to do it less and less the more time that they are together. And that has a really detrimental effect, because what happens oftentimes is that touch, all kinds of touch, become sexual when there isn't that space of neutral touch. So then when a couple is sitting and watching a show together at the end of the day, and the husband puts his hand on the wife's thigh, or she leans her head on his shoulder, it automatically becomes assumed that this is a bid for sex, right? And she'll be like, I don't want to cuddle with him because then he's going to think there's a chance that we're going to have sex later tonight. Or when like classic one is, right, when the woman's washing the dishes and her husband comes and gives her a hug from behind, she's like, oh, get over it. A lot of times it's because she's like, I don't want to put ideas in his head. Why am I not giving him a hug? Because then he's going to think he can do take it to the next step. So a really great tip I give couples when they've noticed that this pattern is happening for them is to even just use this as a code word. Like, first of all, to get familiar with the concept of neutral touch and how important it is in maintaining a bond and a connection and just healthy intimacy in physical intimacy. And then you can say, like, when you're giving your husband a hug, this is a neutral touch hug, or neutral touch is long. So I say, like, come up with a code word. You can call it like purple and just be like, this is a purple hug, right? Or if your husband comes to like snuggle on the couch or says like, hey, can we cuddle before bed? Like, yeah, but like only a purple cuddle, right? So then the expectations are clear and you can actually enjoy touching each other. And oftentimes what happens is that when a couple remembers how much they like each other and that it feels good to touch each other and to get a foot rub, or to be able to rest your head on your husband's shoulder, or to snuggle in bed after a long day and talk about, your thoughts and feelings, or even while you're breastfeeding or nursing the baby, right? Or folding laundry together. oftentimes we'll find that we're like, hey, I like this. You know what? Maybe I like a little bit more. And then this leads us into the sexual intimacy part, where a lot of times we think about having sex is actually penetrative sex with full nudity. And like we have a very clear pattern in our mind of what it needs to include and how it develops. Right? Usually we think of the baseball model, which is like first base, second base, third base, home run, yay. Okay. And that is a really problematic way to think about sex because first of all, it pits us as kind of two teams against each other, right? Like he's trying to score, I'm trying to go back to sleep and let's see who's going to win tonight. And it also makes it like very obvious that there's a clear goal and end, and there are very clear things that need to be included. And there are two metaphors, which I love using. But before I jump into them, I just want to, I've been talking for a while. How's all
it's great. Sounding? Keep going. Go for your metaphor.
Okay.
Keep going.
So there are two metaphors that I love using. One is from Emily Nagoski, and she says it's kind of like when we get invited to a party, right? So like, let's say you invite me to your 30th birthday party and I'm like, well, you know what? I know. Like, I can't disappoint Elise. Oh my gosh, I'm so honored that you thought to invite me. This is so exciting. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to come. And I book a babysitter and I even like get my nails done and I'm all excited to go out. And like, finally, I'll have some time to myself to like go out with friends. But then the day of the event comes and it was just one thing after another. And maybe one of my kids is sick and it's nighttime and I never go out at night. I'm just like, no, this is not happening. I'm not going. I don't want to go. Forget it. I'm going to cancel. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like I told you. And like, oh, these people are going to be there who I actually like and want to see. So I put on my party dress and I go to the party. And 9 times out of 10, what's going to happen?
You're going to enjoy.
I'm going to have a good time and I'll get home and I'll be like, wow, I'm so proud of myself for going out. I forgot how much I liked that. That was so great. I should do that more often. And it could be I'll get to the party and I'll be like, yeah, no, I'm not feeling it. Okay. I'm going to cut out early and just, happy birthday and leave. And that is kind of like what happens with sex. So a lot of times we expect sex to start with desire. Like in the movies, like our eyes lock across the room. We're like, oh my gosh, I want you. And maybe that was like in the beginning of our relationship. Maybe in the beginning of our relationship, every time, our husband gave us a kiss on the back of our neck, we're like, oh my goodness. And we felt physically turned on. But as we're married, couples in long-term relationships generally don't experience sex that way. And what happens is much more like this party where we decide we're prioritizing sex. We know that we like this person and we know that it's important for our relationship or it's important to us for our self-identity, for our pleasure. Yes, even mothers deserve pleasure and to enjoy themselves and to feel good in their body. And we put on our party dress and we get in our bed and we let our skin touch our partner's skin. And we remember how much we like touching each other and how good it feels to get a back massage. And if we're feeling it, then we can continue, right? Pleasure is the measure. If it feels good, do more of it. And if you show up at the party and you get there and you're not feeling it, you can say, hey, this feels really good, but I think this is where I'm out for tonight. Let's try again tomorrow, right? That's amazing. That can still be sexual intimacy. That can still be having sex. It doesn't have to include penetration to be called sex. And oftentimes what happens is once a couple gets into bed and shows up and starts, they remember, oh yeah, I like this. We should do this more often. This is a really great idea. How come I've been dreading it so much?
Yeah, I love that ability to just tap into the gray areas. Like, don't be afraid of that. And even how you said, even if I'm not feeling it right now, and then I say, I think this is where I'm at for today and that's it. That can also bring to so much couple growth, like just being able to be attentive to each other and listen to each other. And that could bring up so much in and of itself, even if, as you said, there's no goal of getting to whatever it is you decide, but that in and of itself is such a beautiful journey that can bring so much good to the couple.
Yeah. And you can even say like, you know what, I'm not really in the mood to be touched right now, but I do have the capacity, or it is accessible to me to be able to do something for you, what would feel good for you, right? And then the next metaphor ties into exactly what you were saying about setting a goal. So instead of the baseball model, there's someone named Al Vernaccio, who's a sexuality educator, and he gave a really great TED Talk. So whoever's listening, go watch it afterwards. But he introduces the pizza model. And the pizza model really is like, it's so clear when we think about it this way, but it's like, wow. It's like think about sex like going out and eating pizza, right? So what determines if you want to eat pizza? Well, sometimes if you're hungry, it's if you have desire, but sometimes you're just going out on a date with someone and you are at a pizza shop. So you order pizza and you might not really be craving pizza at that time. And you might not even be that hungry, but it smells good and you're having a good time with the date. And it comes to the table and you eat a couple bites and wow, it's delicious. You forgot how delicious pizza is. And it has your favorite toppings and you really have a great time eating the pizza in the end. But the thing with pizza that's different about baseball is that the people who decide to start, right, when you're playing baseball is like, there's a set time for the game to start. When you're going out to eat pizza, you decide if you want to eat pizza, how hungry you are, what kind of pizza you want, when to stop. Maybe you're allergic to pizza, right? Maybe right now you're on a non-gluten diet, so you have to get special gluten-free pizza, right? Which could be after having a baby. Maybe things that you used to do don't feel good to you right now. Maybe your breasts are really tender and sore, so you're going to have sex with a bra on, or you won't be touching them. So it might not be as delicious as the regular pizza, but that's okay, because you know that you're not going to break out in hives afterwards, or that you'll at least be able to go on a date and have a good time with your partner. So I think that's a really, really helpful metaphor. A lot of times thinking about it in terms of pizza, in terms of of that kind of interpersonal interaction, and less of a goal-based race or competition.
I love that. I'm taking notes as you're talking. So I love that. I want to also touch on body image, because I know this one is a rough one for many, many moms, that they feel like they don't have their body back, which they don't. And I like to call it body rebranding. Like we rebrand our bodies for something totally different, but they feel completely insecure in their bodies. They maybe don't want to show their bodies to their husbands. How do we deal with that?
So that is a huge topic, and there's so much there. And for every woman, it's also going to be different, right? The concerns will be different. The experience will be different. And I love the idea of body rebranding, because I say that we have this concept of bouncing back and getting back to yourself, right? And it's kind of a ridiculous expectation. Like I understand the concept of it.
I always say, I don't want to bounce back. I'm not a ball and I'm pretty happy who I became.
Right. So I think that's a beautiful thing. I think we have this desire of being able to know ourselves and to feel like we're in touch with that thing that we know. It's familiar. It gives us a sense of security and a sense of self, and like a foundation that we're working off of in terms of our self-identity, not even in terms of our body. Right. And in terms of our body as well, we want to feel like, okay, this is what I look like, and this is what I'm going to look like. But life, and I love this term, it's called life forward movement. The whole progression of being alive is through change and is through growth. And life forward movement, when it's not blocked, it draws us forward always. And our growth and our change are going to occur, and we're going to be different, and our partners are going to be different throughout our life. And the same is true of our body. Our body is going to grow and change with us. I remember once I gave a workshop for women about sexuality after childbirth, and a woman raised her hand, and it was such a sweet moment. She asked, I just want to know, like, is it normal for our bodies to change? Like, is this actually how it's supposed to be? Or is it just because of our modern day culture? And I said, yes, that's such a beautiful question. Our bodies are meant to grow and change, right? And for so many reasons in our modern day culture, we have an expectation of women's bodies to be, to even be prepubescent, to not show any sort of sexual maturation, which is a lot of times we see in terms of hair removal and pubic hair removal, and body shape, but also for sure, not to show any signs of motherhood and of pregnancy. it is normal for a woman's body to be round and mushy and squishy and big and saggy and drapey and so many different things. It is not a normal expectation for our body to stay tight and firm and smooth and taut. Now, if your body is that way, if you want your body to look that way, that's fine. The question for me always arises when there's emotional distress connected to that. So meaning if I want my body to look a certain way, you can, it's your body. I say it's kind of like a house, right? You can paint your house, you can do renovations. The question is if you still feel at home in it. So the question is why you want to create this change. You want to do your nails, you want to go on a diet. Is it from a place of self-hatred or not being able to accept the way you look right now? Or is it from a place where you feel at home in your body and you feel comfortable there? And you also want to make a shift or a change. And I think that introduces another really important term, which is body neutrality. There's so much of a push nowadays to body positivity, and it can feel like a huge jump for us who are struggling with even being able to accept that this is what our body looks like, to all of a sudden start loving every single part, right? There are all of these like memes of like, you earned your tiger stripes, or love every wrinkle, or of course I love my saggy belly. This is where my babies grew. And you're like, no, I don't love this. Like, I love my kids. I'm glad that I was able to grow them in my body, but I don't love the way my body looks right now. I feel like betrayed by my body. I feel like kids ruined my body. I feel like I can't sleep. My house is a mess and they destroyed my body. Like my breasts are hanging down by my knees. My stomach is even somewhere there. I'm leaking pee when I laugh. Like, what the heck? I don't feel good about this. So first of all, like with every process, to just take a pause and to allow yourself to feel those feelings. Because one of the most destructive things we do is try to convince ourselves that we don't feel that way, is that we don't like the way we look, but we're like, no, I love my body. Forgive me, my children. Yeah. Like, no, it's okay to feel those feelings. Like you can feel disappointed and betrayed and upset and let yourself cry about the loss. Becoming a mother, becoming a parent is a huge gain and huge growth. And there's so much beauty. And there's also loss that goes along with that, right? We lose our part of our self-identity, and we're going to have to now recreate that self-identity. And it will be recreated as something bigger and more beautiful. But the first stage is letting it fall apart. And the same is true with your relationship with your body, right? Yeah, there is something here that has been irrevocably changed. It probably will not go back to the way it was. It's not really supposed to go back to exactly the way it was. But that can be a really hard transition. And so to allow yourself, right, as women, we have the secret of the phoenix. We have the secret of the death and the rebirth in our body, right? So to let yourself fall apart, to let the death of your pre-baby body happen. And then we can start working on moving through a process of acceptance and maybe even love. And a process of acceptance can look like body neutrality, which I love, which is just saying like, this is my body. It's not good or bad. The fact that my stomach is fat isn't a moral failing of mine. The fact that my stomach is thin isn't a moral achievement of mine. This is my body. To be able to look at it in the mirror and just be like, hey, there you are. This is what my body looks like right now. Okay, so just that stage is really, really huge.
I love that so much. I feel like you just gave permission to so many things that are not spoken about. Uh-huh. And I feel like a lot of people could like take a deep breath now and like, oh, okay. Yeah. And just be.
Yeah. And then there's also another step, which it's interesting because as I was writing my book, I have a book on sexuality after childbirth. I found like an astounding lack of literature and research into men's experience of their wives postpartum. So there was a little bit of research of how men experience postpartum, but like what do they think of their wife, of their relationship? So I put together like a Google form, and I sent it out to a lot of men, and I asked people to, to fill it in about how they felt about their partner's body postpartum. And it was really interesting to notice that there was a very strong distinction between feeling attracted to certain body parts and feeling attracted to a woman as a whole. And I see this also in general with women themselves, where we can say, like, I'm attracted to him. There isn't certain thing. I can't say, like, oh my God, his arms are super sexy, or like, wow, when I see his, thighs, that really turns me on. But I just feel attracted to this person. And that's also really helpful a lot of times for women, is first of all, to know that all of the men who I've seen, sometimes there'll be certain body parts where, like, yeah, I had to adjust to the, her breast being different, or to the fact that their chest was totally off limits, during breastfeeding and that whole period. But I'm still super attracted to my wife. Right? Even though she's gained weight, even though her body feels different, I'm still super attracted to her. A lot of men even said they're even more attracted to her now after seeing her become a mother, and how that's like super sexy to have seen her go through this incredible experience of childbirth, and to see how much she gives of herself for their family. And so to notice that even if there are certain body parts of yours that maybe your husband is a little bit less attracted to, or that you feel you don't connect to as much, there's still the person as a whole, and the experience of connecting through touch and through sexuality is still there. And the fact that it changed doesn't mean it's bad, right? We know the fact that things change doesn't mean they're bad or worse. They can actually be better when we move through this process of being able to accept it and to grow into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it so much. Thank you so much for everything you said. I'm looking at the clock and I want to keep on talking, but I know that we have to finish soon. So before we finish off, really, thank you so much for everything. Before we finish off, I'm first going to ask you five questions? 5 questions that I ask all guests, just to hear different perspectives about motherhood. But first, can you tell us where we could find you?
So I'm on Instagram, my name Yonina Rubinstein, and on Facebook, I have a group also for Jewish parents. Oh, you'll put the link in it's a very long name. I'll send you the link for talking to how to raise sexually healthy children. And I have a website, yoninarubinstein.com, where you can also get the digital book. I think it's also on Amazon.
Excellent. So I will link everything down in the show notes. You could find everything there.
Amazing.
So we're going to go for our short and sweet questions. So you could really, it could be one word, whatever you want. Go for it. Okay. So what is your favorite thing about being a mom?
The self-growth that it forces me to do.
Love that.
My favorite and worst part, but yeah.
So next question, what is one of the challenges that you face in motherhood?
So that, and also that I recently discovered that I have ADHD, and that is a really big challenge for me as a mother, is learning how is being able to do all the mother things with this neurological component that I have.
That's like a whole nother episode that I would love to bring you back about how to be a mother with ADHD. Awesome.
With kids of ADHD also. So it's the whole fun in a bucket. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Next question. If you had a deserted island retreat for 1 week, what would you take with you?
I think a good friend.
A good friend.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Embarrassing mommy moment.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so I'm a sexuality educator, so we are pretty open about a lot of things. And at one point, one of my kids was like, "Why don't we have more children?" And I said, "Well, I don't remember how we came up, but we had spoken about birth control." And she said, "What do you have something?" And I said, "Yeah, I also have something, because right now I feel like it's not a good time for me to have more children." And then my in-laws came over, and we were talking. All of a sudden, she said, "You know that Ema has something in her body, so she can't have more babies."
Oh my God. I could imagine being a sex educator. It brings enough embarrassing moments, I feel like.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. I'm just imagining it in my head. Oh my goodness. Okay. What tip would you give to yourself before becoming a mom? To yourself now?
Ooh. To start going to therapy.
Going to therapy. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so, so much, Yonina. This was amazing for me, and I'm sure for all of our listeners. So thank you so much.
And I just want to end with one thing that I didn't say, we touched upon, but truly, truly, sex can be even better as your relationship grows. And even with kids, it can not only, we said we're not going back to what was, but you can really learn and grow. And there is hope out there. So for anyone who's listening here, who's like, oh, well, we might be able to have sex, but it really, really can be amazing and even better than it was before. So give yourself that gift of just knowing that.
And maybe bouncing off of that, where should I go if I feel like it's not, and I don't know what to do to get out of that rut?
Yeah. So if you're experiencing pain, pain is super, super normal and common. Most women will experience pain during intercourse at some point in their life, but it's not something that you should experience. It's a sign that there's something else going on. So definitely talk to a sexuality professional. That can be a sex therapist, the special therapists who are trained to work with sexual issues. Not every therapist is. There are also sex coaches and educators who also can be really helpful depending on what you're dealing with. And you're welcome to reach out and ask me, and I can help refer you to the right professional.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All righty. Such a pleasure. I feel so honored.
This is amazing.
Thank you. Hey mama, and thanks for joining us and listening to this episode. I know what it's like to crave some together time with your husband, but feel so stuck because for whatever reason, you can't leave the house. Maybe someone's sick, maybe there's no babysitter budget, or maybe you're just too exhausted. Well, that's why I would love to gift you a list of 50 date night ideas that you can do at home when you can't find a babysitter. It doesn't mean date night is doomed. Go over to alizasaid.com. That's ALIZASAID.com/50 date night ideas and download a list of awesome ideas for a date night at home. Plus, you get some really essential guidelines to make a home date awesome. Some important things that can either make it or break it. So head over to alizasaid.com/50 date night ideas and date away.